Hey, Katerina. Thank you so much for being here today for the first episode of this podcast. We've known each other for about a year and a half, and
Yes.
you're part of the Next Gen Human Leaders community. And, I've had a chance to get to know you as a young professional, but also as the young woman behind the CV. And today, why this conversation is important for us and for our audience is because we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about your story. I'd like to know more about it. I'd like the audience to know what it means to be a young professional in today's world of work. And also what leaders can perhaps learn by listening more closely to your generation.
Yes,
Sounds like a plan?
sounds great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. Me too. If we take away your job title, your beautiful studies at EHL and IE Business School, and everything we've achieved professionally, who are you today?
I would say I'm a multicultural woman because I grew up in a family with a Greek father and Greek and Swiss father, a German mother, and I grew up in Paris. So I just was born in this multicultural environment. And also from the beginning, I always loved losing myself in imagination. Can I say that? And being creative, being just me. I think that's the important thing, just staying me and just being curious. That's how I would define myself without anything of my CV,
Yeah.
professional wise.
Yeah. So you mentioned being curious, and you mentioned obviously your background, which is really exciting because you speak 5 different languages really well and really fluently. And I think you're learning a 6th one, if I remember well.
When I'm traveling, I'm trying always to learn a few words from the country. For example, when I was in Zanzibar, I was interested in learning the few words so I can maybe say hello, how are you, and everything, and thank you, and a few words in Swahili, for example. But yes, I think it's also very important to blend into a cultural environment.
I love it. And, I wanted to go back to what you said about being you, and you mentioned curiosity. I've seen in your journey that you've traveled, you went to different places. You just mentioned Zanzibar. Is
Yes.
that how you define your curiosity, or what else, do you put under curiosity?
Good question. I would say, yeah, I think curiosity is all about stepping out of your comfort zone and say, okay, and the best example is to travel, and also travel by your own is also a very good experience. And I would say it's the best school you can do is to travel by yourself because you don't have someone to support you and would say, oh, I'm too shy to ask this person where to go. You have to do it by your own.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I would say travel goes with curiosity.
If we go back to maybe the little Katerina, because you told me once that you went through something at a very young age that some people will never go through in their life. You had chemotherapy when you were 5 years old.
Yeah,
Can
between
you
5 and
tell
6.
us? I'm sorry?
Between 5 and 6, yes, correct.
Between 5 and 6. Can you tell us more about it? And also, how do you think this experience shaped you as a person you are today?
I think those experiences when you go through some sicknesses like mine, where it's also something you can see from the outside, because of course, when you are going under chemotherapy, you lose your hair, you're maybe a bit weaker. And as a little girl, then of course, people, when you're walking outside without hair or with a scarf or with a hat, well, people are wondering if it's midsummer and you are wearing a hat. People are wondering, why is this little girl dressed like this? And I would say something that really make me grow a bit faster than the others is to notice that appearance is very heavy in our culture, unfortunately, and that you are being easily judged. I remember people were thinking, oh, she cannot do it because she is sick, which is wrong. I mean, like, it doesn't mean that you're going under treatment that you cannot do things. And you can see that kids are very powerful for that because they are like continuing to do their best to have a normal life. And I remember I was always trying to go to school when I was at the hospital. I was always trying to continue my studies and continuing learning to read and everything so I can really be the little girl that is having a normal life like the other ones. Of course, it's not the case. And there are still impacts because you grow a bit faster. You're just growing in a adult problem, I would say. I don't know what you think, but it's my way of seeing. It's like you don't have the same childhood as other people.
It made you grow differently and also learn to deal with society that is with young kids that are different to you because you're going through, like you said, an adult challenge or usually a challenge that's not dealt by a little girl like you. So, and you told me, Katharina, that you felt different from others from that age, but also throughout your journey, your studies and your workplace. And I remember when we discussed it a couple of months ago, you were seeing it a little bit like a weakness, like I'm different. The others are like that and I'm not like that. But I feel like through our conversation, this has evolved. Can you tell me about this evolution and how do you see that today?
Yeah, I think it depends on the day. Sometimes, of course, everyone has bad days or like days where negativity is more powerful than positivity. I would say the main problem is because I have the impression through this experience I was like thinking differently, or I was more mature than people from my age. And that was a bit the gap, because I would say it was more difficult to build relationships because people do not understand why I act or why I think like this. The fact that you helped me also to prepare my profile in a professional way. I understood that yes, sometimes challenges have a strong impact, and you just have to see it from another point of view and reimagine and recreate this like personal branding to make it like strong. And this is what I chose. It's like you either can choose stay negative and take this experience as a weight, or use it as a rather positive, even if it's hard to say positive, but as a life experience to say, okay, I faced this, but I will be able to face other things that will be also maybe as hard as this experience was. And this is something I would say is very powerful, because I'm equipped to face other events that might not be that easy.
What you're talking about, because what you mentioned is a bit like, it's not something that happens to you, but it's something that happens for you. And it's actually to see it with some gratefulness, which is hard, because when you go through what you went and then the consequences it had later, you're like, why did it happen to me? And like you said, at times, the negative or the reality comes back, and then you're like, well, what if I'm grateful about it? What if this happens for a reason and it helps me to get stronger? And I think what you mentioned is, and it's a word we use a lot today, but I think in your case, it's about this resilience, about this bouncing back and saying, well, life gave me this for a reason and I'm going to make, the most out of it. And, I know you as a sensitive, as a creative, and also organized person. So you've got this organization, like very organized brain, and you've got this real creativity and sensitivity, which is quite rare to have both. And that, is for sure, was born through, your childhood and the way you grew up.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can see people who were living. I like to take the example of Alexander McQueen because I don't know. I remember I saw a documentary and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know he went through so many things in his life. You can see they can be very organized and structured in terms of design and everything, but also very creative. When you see one of his collection that was about the sea, I don't remember the name, but you could see how structured the clothes were, how creative everything was. It was impressive. And you can see that people who go through hard moments, they tend to be also very creative. Because in my point of view, you just try to escape a bit this adult world, and you just build yourself a creative world. And that's where you build also a lot of creativity.
And
I don't know
that's
what
when
you think, but
yeah. No, I love it. I love your example about McQueen. I think it's very relevant. And I think, like you mentioned, that structure is the foundation. And then once you have a framework, you can let your creativity, take off. And I love when we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, you talked to me about that turtle at time to just put yourself into your turtle mood to actually go and create, not to just get on your own and get sad about it, but more like, okay, I need my bubble, I need my turtle mood, and I'll go and create something. So I love the way you exploit, this difference and the way
yeah,
you
and also
create
the
beautiful
turtle,
things.
yeah, and also the turtle is, I remember when I went to Beijing and I visited the Imperial City. The guy told us about the huge turtle that was sitting in front of the entrance of the Imperial City. And he said something about the turtle is also something that symbolizes, I don't know how we say it in English, sagesse.
Sagesse, wisdom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wisdom. So also to go back to you, to just a bit take a step back and think is also something where you build a bit also of wisdom, because you also think, okay, is this right for me or it's not? And this is also something we talked about cultural environments in workplaces,
Yeah.
where you don't have our generation, I think, because there's a bit of scarcity in terms of job openings. You tend to maybe take the first job that has been offered to you, and you forget about this cultural work environment. And after, when you get in and you step in and you think, oh, well, no, maybe this environment was not for me. And that's why I like this idea of wisdom, turtle, to just, what you told me, to just step back and like think if this is made for you or not.
Yes, I love the way, Katerina, you mentioned perspective. Because it can be someone else's perspective, like you said before about, this difference that you used to see as a weakness, but it's actually turned into a strength with your creativity, with your sensitivity, with the way you organize yourself. And now you've spoken about a perspective of taking time for yourself, this wisdom you were talking about. And you mentioned the world of work and how some of the young people yourself, you might take a job that's not necessarily aligned with who you are because
Yes.
the world of work is different. It's different. It's harder to find a job. And so at times we go into something and this is not necessarily for us. And that's why I think we see with the Gen Z that there's quite a lot of move, but at time it's just because maybe you or some other young people weren't necessarily aligned with the job that was made for you. So I want to go back into that a little bit so I don't want you to speak for an entire generation, but from your very own experience at 26 years old already, what do you think senior leaders still misunderstand about young people entering the workplace today?
That's a good question. I would say there is maybe expectation gap. I would say, from my point of view, they require us to have a lot of experiences, which is sometimes not possible. And I would love them to give us also more the chance to prove that we fit into the role, because it doesn't mean that we don't have the exact titles they are searching for, that we don't fit. I would say we are more like a Swiss knife, so we can do multiple things at the same time, and we are not specialized in one topic. And yes, so that's why, like, think about you when you were our age. I would say people gave you the chance, and you were becoming, you're not coming from a specific background, I would say, or with a specific education, but you were given the chance to prove yourself. And I think that's also something we would love. Personally, I would love to have, is that to have a leader that is like, okay, I trust you, I will give you the chance. Okay, maybe you have some gaps, but okay, I will teach you, and more like, and then you will grow with us. So more like a collaborative leadership, I would say.
What I hear is that you'd love to have the opportunity, you talk about trust, which is really strong, and also this opportunity to feel that you're both at the same level with different competencies. Of course, you don't pretend that you have the exact amount of tools that they have in their toolboxes with 20, 30 years of experience, but you've got something different to bring. You know, today the young people are very well traveled, that they love to contribute in their own way. And sometimes from what I hear from you, that there's not always the opportunity to actually collaborate hand in hand and to prove that you can actually bring value to the organization. And what makes you want to give your very best to a leader? How should a leader act? You spoke about trust, but you know, what makes you want to give your very best?
As I said, trust and also motivation is like, okay, if I give my best, I will have an outcome. It's not necessarily monetary, but like also like, you know, a self-confidence boost. Or, okay, you do this very well, but I will give you even more. So like you can see there's an evolution, and I can like see, okay, I will improve every day, and I will step out of my comfort zone and become a better person. Not a better person, but how do we say it? The best of myself.
I think what you say is you can give the best of yourself and optimize your performance if you feel you've got, you know, this trust, this collaboration, this you feel that you've got value. And you mentioned it, and it's quite interesting because you mentioned about monetary. And often we think, I say we think as senior leaders, well, the young Gen Z, you know, the young generation, they want money, they want free time, they don't want to work, you know, they want to work from home. Like it's kind of this, they kind of feel entitled, right? Which, you know, is it's not the reality. I work with young people like you. Can you tell me, you know, how you see it from your side? And when I tell you that as a stereotype, how would you counter that?
I think there is a wording gap. I would say it's more about equilibrium, and we are looking, of course, to work, but we're also thinking about our personal life. And I think this is also very important, where nowadays mental health and health within the company is getting more and more important. And yes, I think it's all about equilibrium, and also saying, let's keep it to, it's all about equilibrium and wording.
You spoke about two things. I'm going to bounce back on wording gaps and expectations gap.
Yeah.
But maybe just say, you know, you spoke about trust, you spoke about collaborative attitude. And I think if you speak about listening, just sometimes just listening to ideas. You remember we had examples during, you know, your work time where you're like, because I wasn't listened to, then I just shut down, right? When actually when someone allows me to speak up, I will contribute, but sometimes these ideas are shut down. And so, you know, that's, I think, what you can continue with. But that equilibrium is good for you. And then for a senior leader, what
for a
should
senior
they
leader,
understand?
It's to listen and to be, I would say, open-minded. When I would say, like, there is still this gap of hierarchy, and where I feel like there is the listening in one way, but I think listening should be in two ways. And as we say, to grow a company, leaders and juniors, I would say, should work together to nourish the success of a entrepreneurs. And that's the
I
key.
love it. I love the words you use, nourish and this collaborative work between different generations. And, I want to come back to what you said, because you mentioned initially expectations gap. You
Yeah.
mentioned wording gap, and now you mentioned hierarchy gaps. And these are three very important words, because what I observe as well is these gaps between generations that just want to be filled, right? And
Yeah.
often what I say is a different playbook, right? We've had a playbook, a leadership playbook, and it worked, 15, 10 years ago. But some people say, yeah, but, I know it's not like 20 or 10 years ago, but it's not even like 3 years ago. Because our leadership, senior leadership, needs to evolve with a new playbook to be able with the young generation, but together to fill the gaps, right? So it's not about senior leaders only adapting, but it's also about, you adapting and managing to bridge those gaps. So what would be your advice to senior leaders or to your peers also from your generation to say, how do we bridge these expectations gaps? Do we need to talk more? Do we need to communicate? Do we need to take time to just sit down together?
I think first of all is in terms of personality. What I noticed, the main problem is ego, because when you're a senior, you probably know you're more experienced than a younger employee, I would say a junior. And it's just to work on yourself and say, okay, from both sides, is okay, I should step back and think about what this person said to me and what I'm saying to this person. And also use the correct way to communicate ideas. So it doesn't look, for example, for younger generation, I would say, doesn't look too bossy or I'm the smart one in the room. And for the leaders, I would say, no, I'm more experienced. So no, your idea is bad. I know better. Because I feel like this can lead also to this, I like to say marketing myopia, because of course you know what to do and you're used to do your task as you learned, but you forget to see what is happening around you. So it's always to step back and look at the environment you're living in and look at how generations are evolving. Because of course, each generation is evolving in a different environment. Of course, for example, I had an intern and I noticed she was 100% into ChatGPT. So she was not longer really, had my impression she was no longer using really her old brain. Yes, correct.
Her very own.
Yeah, her own brain. And she was directly using ChatGPT instead of using maybe Google or Chrome or other search engine to find a solution how to search properly. There's always, we say, generation gaps, but we always need to look around us and learn from them and find a midpoint where things could work.
You speak about this adapting to each other, right?
Yeah.
And, I want to go back to the wording gap you mentioned, because once when we were working with the community, the Next Gen Human Leaders community, we spoke about loyalty and respect and all these big values that we see in every company, right? And they mean something different. Loyalty means something different for you, and it means something different for senior leaders. And sometimes when you talk about wording gap, even the same word has a different meaning. And so that's, something that I think is interesting to dive into and to have those conversations to say, well, what is respect to you? I remember at times in conversations within the community, some of your peers said, well, I didn't feel respected. So what does respect mean to you? And how does that senior leader can better understand how to respect you in your own terms? And how can he or she feels respected in their own way, right? So I think that's, just a topic I had in mind about this wording gap you mentioned. Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, I think totally, because I would say also something that is, as a senior leader, you tend to forget, I would say, is to express yourself and communicate properly what are the limits and what are the expectations. For example, I highly value people coming on time. I don't like people coming 5 minutes late. It does exist. Fine. I will make sure I will come on time, like Swiss time. But there is the fact that because there is this hierarchy, there's no communication. Or there is I will tell it to someone and someone will tell it to me. No, there is a problem. Senior leaders should come directly to us and ask, and should directly communicate to this person, because there's a way of, I would say, saying it to someone, and after someone else is saying it, after the wording could be used differently or expressed in another way and everything.
So interesting, because I can hear you talk about that hierarchy where, we've had tall hierarchies for years and they're flattened, but they're still hierarchies. And you, as part of the new generation, you prefer that it's direct and honest and spoken directly to you. So you get it and you understand the message that that person wanted to communicate. But what happens is that we're still using the hierarchy of telling someone who will tell someone who will tell you, you will not get the right message. And then you will feel maybe bad, maybe disrespected, maybe sad, maybe frustrated. And very often, because I work with a lot of young people like you, very often you will just shut down into your own turtle, but not the wise turtle, the turtle like, okay, I won't say anything anymore. And the challenge that I see is that when a young person like you shuts down, then there's a disengagement, there's a disconnection. And that's the time where the company, the leader, the environment starts to lose someone like you. That's something that we've observed. Is that something that also you have faced at time to shut down and say, won't talk about it anymore?
Yes, it was more about the fact when bringing ideas and and the answer was, I know it better. I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, okay. Like the willingness of not changing is something, in my opinion, where I can easily disengage. Because there's, okay, I'm just working for you, but we are not a team.
Do we need to create more space for communication? You spoke about speaking more directly and giving feedback directly, which is important to you and to the young generation. You spoke about the trust, the collaborative, way of working together, to value each other, to feel at the same level so that you can, better contribute. Do we need to create more space for
I think leaders should really take the chance and take the time to give feedbacks, because it's very essential, and give also the opportunity to not be the person, I know it, but just sit down, as I would say leaders were when they were our age. They had like mentors. I think leaders, exactly. Leaders need to become mentors, because you need to when you come to the office every day, you need to be inspired by someone. If you're not inspired by a leader, then there's no motivation. And I think every leader should become a mentor, because they are older, they are more experienced, and this is how we can learn. And of course, leaders should not leave their values, because I think some values are a bit getting lost now, because they are maybe scared to offend or they have to be more politically correct in topics that I would say should remain the same. Whichever generation, certain values should remain the same, like punctuality, or for me, this is something very important. And I have an impression or like respect when you're sending an email. Even if you're younger, or speak to young, email structure should be respectful and structured.
I love it how you said that leaders should be mentors, right? Because you want to be inspired to go to work. You want to be inspired to learn. You want to be inspired as well because you listen to. And leaders, because of the way we've been used to different hierarchies before, we're still more into control. And at times we say, no, we empower, but we still like, this is the way it worked before. And so this is the way it should work. And, you're 25, 26, 27, and you're coming to tell me how to run my business. And you spoke a little bit about ego before, and sometimes it's just protection, right? It's not always ego. Sometimes it's just protecting what has been built and what has been done. And I love the way you say, well, leaders, it's not about control anymore today. It's not about, I know all the answers, because it was like that years ago. We had to know all the answers. And now today is, we will come up with the answers together, and we will co-create that, the performance, the organization together. And we'll co-create those projects together. I think that's what I hear from you when you tell me about it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
So, Katharina, if we had to think of one advice that we could give to our audience, to our senior leaders, on what could they change tomorrow, something simple, something they could put in place in the workplace that will help reduce the gaps between the generations, what would be your advice?
I would say is to, for example, to organize a meeting, a feedback session where it's not the leader who gives the feedback, but the junior who gives the feedback to the leader. And not saying, oh, you were not good today, but saying, okay, what are the expectations? How could the leader help the junior to achieve their dream or achieve their the skills or achieve what they are looking for in this job.
In the end, what you're describing is this cross mentoring. We learn from each other. So the feedback session should not only be one way, but both ways. And the leader could help the young professional by asking a question. And you said, is there anything I can do for you? Or what matters most to you? Is there something I could do differently to support you? So what you're encouraging is a both-way conversation and making space for it. How long would this conversation take? How long do you think it should take?
It should be 20 minutes, maybe weekly, but be weekly, but not yearly or every 3 months. Because then after you just gauge all the problems maybe you had with your with your manager, with the leader. So this, you solve very quickly all the problems.
I love it, Kat, because I was talking to one of my clients recently about these yearly feedback sessions. They're over. We still do yearly or sometimes twice a year, these sessions that actually we lose 6 months or 1 year of communicating and exchanging. And I love it how you say, bi-weekly, once every 2 weeks, 15, 20 minutes. It's not a lot. It doesn't have to be an hour. But these are much more valuable than making you wait for 1 year to get your feedback, because by that time, you're probably already disconnected from the organization because you haven't had a chance to fully express yourself.
Exactly.
I love it. Thank you so much. And that gives us a lot of hopes for the future of work. I'd like to, thank you for being honest, for being you, because that's very important, because often we don't have time. So we don't spend the time, but we don't have time in organizations as senior leaders to actually sit and have this time together to better listen to each other, to better express each other, to understand each other's expectations and needs. So, thank you for being you and for being honest and giving us some great advice.
Thank you for listening to me.
So maybe I'll finish with one question. Today, you're a project manager. You're handling multiple projects in Paris, including coordinating some VIP events. And you have, because I know you, this very interesting combination, and we said it before, of being highly organized and deeply creative. You also have great relationship with people. I've had the chance to interact with you many times. So when you look ahead in the near future, what's your dream? What's your dream job?
I would say my dream job is to work in international events and being able to travel thanks to this job. I think we'll say this is so rewarding for everything, personal life and professional wise.
Great. And you'd like to be based anywhere in the world?
I would say Switzerland. There are so many international organizations in Switzerland. And of course, Switzerland is the leader of hospitality. We have all the top hospitality schools there. So it's where I see myself. And I have to travel from there to the around the world.
Great. Thank you so much, Katharina, for
Thank
this
you
chat
so much.
today. And I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Yes, thank you. See you soon.